When President Recep Tayyip Erdogan's critics and supporters call him Sultan, it's not just a nickname. New constitutional reforms kicked in with Erdogan's recent re-election, setting him up for one-man rule. The power grab comes as an ongoing purge has left thousands of his opponents in jail, and an increasingly aggressive foreign policy position has tested traditional alliances. Now, many are wondering just how Erdogan's new term will play out.
Bu seçimin galibi demokrasidir. Milli iradedir. Milletimizin bizatihi kendisidir.
Erdogan wasn't always so polarizing. When he took over as Istanbul's mayor in 1994, some worried that his roots in political Islam would dictate how he served as mayor. But he mostly avoided imposing religion on public life. That is, except for an alcohol ban in city-owned cafes. Erdogan served a stint in prison and was temporarily banned from politics for reading out a poem believed to be pro-militant Islam at a rally. But he returned with a vengeance, riding a wave of popular discontent with the country's military and secular elites. He promised modernization and delivered with massive infrastructure projects. As a result, Turkey was praised by the West and once seen as a beacon of democracy and a model for economic growth. Erdogan shored up a largely forgotten base in Turkey, the rural and religious conservatives, thanks to an economic boom that pulled millions of Turks out of poverty. The son of a ferry captain, his humble beginnings and religious pride only boosted his populist appeal at home and in the Muslim world. So how did Erdogan go from being a highly regarded moderate to a controversial autocrat? Well, once in power, he gradually embraced religion in policy and education, a direct affront to Turkey's secular foundation.
Allah yar ve yardımcımız olsun. Allah yar yardımcımız olsun.
He pushed to restrict access to abortion and aggressively ramped up the construction of Islamic schools, some of which are replacing public schools. This angered secularists who, along with anyone who opposes Erdogan, have little recourse. In 2013, violent police crackdowns on peaceful protesters in Istanbul's Gezi Park sent the message dissent would not be tolerated. Insulting the president could mean spending up to 4 years behind bars. In 2016, Erdogan's presidency nearly came to a head in what was the bloodiest coup attempt in Turkey's political history. But the coup failed, as civilians took to the streets to stop the military. Instead of weakening Erdogan, the coup ushered in a new stage of his autocratic rule. What's followed has been a massive purge of his political opposition. More than 100,000 people, including academics, judges, and journalists, have been detained in connection to the failed coup. Erdogan has even pressured foreign governments to arrest individuals allegedly linked to the coup. The crackdown has also extended to Turkish media. Erdogan's jailing of journalists and sweeping control of traditional media companies have largely shut out independent voices, including opposition candidates in the recent elections.
Varsa icraat konusunda, bu mücadeleyi yürütme konusunda bizimle rekabet edebilecek, yarışabilecek, aşık atabilecek birileri buyursun çıksın meydana.
Reporters Without Borders estimates about 90% of Turkey's newspaper coverage is pro-government. Erdogan's intolerance for dissent has even reached other countries, like in 2017 when his bodyguards assaulted protesters in Washington, D.C. twice as he looked on. His growing power hasn't just come from a purge of opponents, however. He's also changed the constitution to stretch his authority. A 2017 referendum made the president's role an executive post, not a symbolic one. It also increased term limits, got rid of the prime minister role, and expanded the president's budgetary and emergency powers. Erdogan argued these changes were necessary to counter terror threats from Kurdish separatists and extremist groups. But secular Turks and leaders of the EU weren't convinced and condemned the moves as anti-democratic and unfair. So he pushed right back.
Bu Avrupa, İkinci Dünya Savaşı öncesinin ırkçı, faşist, zalim Avrupa'sıdır. Bu Avrupa, Orta Çağ'ın Türk ve İslam düşmanı Avrupa'sıdır.
Erdogan's anti-European outbursts have become increasingly common in recent years. But it's the steady decline in rule of law and freedom of expression that most hurt Turkey's long-term ambitions of joining the EU. Yet the EU still relies on Turkey's partnership to manage the urgent refugee and migrant crisis. Despite mounting international criticism, Erdogan enjoys popular support, nabbing over 50% of votes in the recent elections. Part of that loyalty comes from the father figure image he's cultivated over the years, gaining respect as a powerful advocate for the Muslim world. Aiming to inspire a new nationalism, he's rallied Turkish citizens of all ages.
Maşallah. Türk bayrağı da cebinde. Şehit olursa bayrağı da inşallah örtecekler. Her şey hazır.
One way Erdogan has tried to promote nationalism is by stirring up nostalgia for the Ottoman Empire's glory days. Recent years have seen a surge in Ottoman period dramas, some of which are funded by state television and praised by Erdogan. Although he's tried to unify citizens under the banner of a common identity and economic progress, not all Turks have been able to stomach his authoritarianism. A strong opposition challenge in the recent elections shows that Turks are divided. Even so, Erdogan's new powers give him more free rein than ever.
Durmak yok! Durmak yok! Durmak yok!